You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, I'm telling you, it's amazing Friday. I'm telling you, I'm just catching my breath, but that's what this show is all about. We have true honor giving you guys blueprints. Our audience, you are the reason why we even have this platform. So thank you for taking time to listen and to watch us online. Just like any other type of show, we have another special guest today. Today, we have Thomas Wilson. He's a writer, a business owner, an advocate, and sensory-friendly event specialist. He has a website that I want you to check out, and you can see on the bottom of your screen if you're watching us on YouTube. But the website is rhcreativeadvocacyandstorytelling.net. We're going to learn everything about what he does. And like I said, the whole thing about the part of sensory-friendly event specialist, that is going to be a very key to the storyline of this interview. So first and foremost, Thomas, I know you're busy. That's what everyone who's doing some great work, they're keeping their selves on their toes. So thank you for taking time today off your calendar. First off, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It's been a nice, quiet day to myself, and in all honesty, I cannot undervalue that.
I appreciate that. And that's, sometimes it's great to take that moment to say, you know what, take a deep breath. We made it through the week. Let's have a little time for ourselves or for our favorite people and friends and family, and let's get on the grind back on Mondays. But I love that, because sometimes you do have to just focus on that self-care, man, because if you ain't got a full tank, there's no way you can help other people, man. So let's get right into it for our audience, kind of paint the picture a little bit about what you do as a writer and as a business owner, and also as an advocate.
Absolutely. So I always say I work very largely with the neurodiverse and mental health community, but everything I do, I believe, is rooted in the philosophy and in the idea that we all deserve high quality care, whether or not we have a diagnosis, whether or not we have a lived experience. I know in some people's mind, those two are very different things, but similar. But on top of that, the core of what I do is really utilizing stories as this vessel in order to help the community, help the people around me, but also help those who've either been forgotten or struggled in the school system or had a bad day or even are just seeking peer engagement, access a space that's going to be, so I always say sensory friendly. And I know a lot of people nowadays, when they hear things like sensory friendly, they may get frustrated, they may roll their eyes. But what I mean by that is a space that honors who they are, honors their voice, does not get political, does not get frustrated if someone's confused. It's really a space where we can get together, grow, connect, and not have to worry about, loud jarring noises or intense anger or really the stressors of the day. And so when I do my events, when I do my work, the main focus is really honing in on who we are as people, giving us time to laugh, to relax, and to just be ourselves without worry, without judgment. And my work includes public speaking, writing, advocacy work, all of that, but it also includes working with families, helping people who are trying to access the community, joining in the employment first movement, which is making sure work is equitable where everyone can work, and also really honing in on the idea that we all need the community. I mentioned that I love days to myself, but one of the reasons I thrive at this work is because I also love being around good people. I love to laugh. I love to joke. I love to cry sometimes. And I think that's the beauty of this work, is it can really provide that.
When you think about impact and community engagement, you also have a personal story. Prior to all this great success, I mean, I believe every individual has their own unique path and story. So kind of talk about some of the challenges that you had prior to all the greatness that you're doing right now, because part of that equation of your greatness comes from some kind of struggle or some kind of, hurdles that you had to go get over. So for our viewers and our listening audience, kind of take us back to some of the challenges that you personally had that later enabled you to do what you're doing now.
Absolutely. And just so the audience knows, I'm not going to go into some of the grittier stuff that I've been through, just out of respect. I don't want anyone to listen to this and have to walk away because of PTSD triggers or anything. But so I always say that my story starts with stories. I've loved stories and storytelling ever since I was, 2 or 3. I remember always asking my parents to tell me stories or to read books. And I learned at a really young age that storytelling is a great human experience. It helps us connect to who we are. It connects us to our emotions, to our mindsets, to our days. And I knew at a young age that I still believe that storytelling is one of the great human art forms. It's something that has existed in every aspect of human life for as long as we've been around. But I always also like to say, much like many people, myself, with my own mental health and neurodiversity lived experience, I also grew up as a young kid being told that I was a prodigy. This was by the time I was in 7th grade. People told me I had the IQ of a 35 or a 40-year-old. I had the vocabulary above that. So many of my teachers would tell me, oh, you're going to go on to do great things. And this is where I'm going to filter what I say somewhat, because I want to be respectful of your audience and myself. But I also had a significant loss in my life real early on. I remember the days before that loss, I was a lot more cavalier, a lot more lighthearted. And I remember some of the initial moments, like the days after that, where I really started seeing my own mental health lived experience kick in and my own neurodiversity. I remember being scared a lot, which is fairly common for youth at around that age when we have those significant factors. But I also noticed that my teacher's opinion of me started to shift. I went from that prodigy to someone who was told he was too disruptive, too frustrating. On the more extreme days, I was told that I was a problem in the classroom. I remember when I was in 5th grade, I got in a screaming match with one of my teachers because I got really upset, and she literally hunkered down, looked me in the eyes, and just screamed in my face that I was a monster. Something that should never happen to a child whatsoever. And that was my school experience for a while. A lot of people labeling me in my own inability, I should say, to communicate, because I wasn't being taught what I needed to be taught. I wasn't taught how to process my anger or my emotions. And I remember those early days of that transition from prodigy to problem were really deeply emotional because people just gave up on me. That isn't to say that I didn't have successes, but a lot of my life was marked by people telling me I would never graduate high school, or I would never go to college, or if I did achieve something, it would be prison time. And I always had people in my life who fought for me. But when you're a kid trying to figure out your own identity after, your own PTSD and traumas and things, and the people who are supposed to be supporting you in the school system or in programs just deem you too hard to work with and push you aside, it's not a healthy experience. And that was my experience for a lot of school. I lost my interest in taking tests. I lost my passion for my education for the longest time. I still like to learn, but I hated school. I try now in my adult life not to hate anything, just because hatred does not breed good in this world. And so it wasn't until high school, about like my junior year of high school, where I was in a program for a couple of years, where my experience really started to change. I ended up in a program where they actually worked with me. I remember one day, and I'll be clear, I was by no means a saint. Like, this was not just me being the victim of broken mindsets. This was also me really struggling and not being supported in the way that I needed and not knowing how to be anything other than angry. But I was about my junior year. I was in this program. It's called Plum Creek Academy. I owe a lot to this school. They started to change the narrative. I wasn't the problem. I was the person trying to figure myself out. I wasn't the disruptive one. I was someone struggling with my anger. And I remember there was a day when I was really mad. I had just raged because, again, that was what I was taught for so long. And I felt really bad. I apologized to everyone at the school. And one of my teachers said to me, "That's okay. You had a bad day comparatively to when you were here and you weren't talking to anyone. You were hiding from people, all that kind of stuff. I will take you being angry over being too afraid to try and share who you are." And that moment has always stuck out with me because that was a very different, like, radical change. And because of that school, I graduated high school. Often it was the people there seeing my worth and working really hard to get me to graduate. I actually graduated the first person from that program to graduate from my actual home high school, which was a local one where we transitioned me out to. I then went to college, got a degree of all things of poetry, but I've always been a poet and a writer, and that was something I really wanted to do. Not long after that, I ended up in the school system acting as a reading tutor for kiddos who were behind on the system. And I grew, I got really attached to my kids, and they got really attached to me and learned to love reading. Again, not long after that, I ended up in healthcare. I worked as a mentor, continued to work at my day job. But there was also, really quickly, to kind of speed this up for the sake of time, there was a day in 2021 where I stopped taking care of myself for a while. I always argue that, well, not argue, but say that every day when you have lived experience like mental health and neurodiversity, it is a day-to-day dedication to be our best self. And yes, things are going to go wrong, but we can't let ourselves start to slip in that. And so I spent a lot of my life really depressed for a few months, and I decided that I needed to change. And I said, what am I going to do to change my life so this doesn't happen again? And what am I going to do career-wise? And I had a vision of me going to a storytelling festival with my mom, and not a vision, but like a memory of that moment. And I said, I'm going to be a storyteller. First time in days, I got off the couch. I wasn't crying. I jumped up. I felt excitement and passion and drive, something I hadn't had in a while. A couple of weeks later, I opened my business after some serious reflection. I got started with my first events not long after that, about 6 months later, after a lot of dedication and investment and money being spent. And since then, it's been this incredibly beautiful transition to achieving those memories and understanding them to becoming my best self I currently am at. I also have worked with over 40 plus businesses. I've done like international talks now. I've talked about all of these things. I've worked with businesses. I've been at conventions. I've run over 200 different events in the last couple of years just on one platform. It's been this really transcendently beautiful time, but so much of it is still shaped by those experiences and the understanding that it's always a march forward. It's always a march to that better self. And in doing so, I've been able to really help my community, share my story, but also help people, more importantly, lift up their voice and avoid those pains and those hardships and understand that, yes, there are people who are going to silence us, but that doesn't mean we can't fight back and stand up and share our voice.
Once again, listening and watching us online on Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Thomas Wilson. And man, I mean, everything you said, I can just kind of swing my mic to your neck of the woods and just let you speak for the rest of the show, because what you're saying is really really impactful for our viewers, our listeners to digest, because as you were talking, I was looking over on the website, on your website, RH Creative Advocacy and Storytelling.net. And the quote I want to put out there, you kind of already kind of brushed up on it, but be the change you wish to see in the world. Because everything you said, it kind of includes the person to have that want to be the better version of themselves. But I want to highlight what you said moments ago about is a day-to-day experience. We can't go fast forward into 2 months from now, and we can't just stay in the pity party from 2 years ago. The only thing we have right now in this moment is today. And if we have that mindset that it's a day-to-day progress as we are trying to better ourselves, doors will open up for us, opportunities will come. And your unique story of when you started your business, obviously you found a need. And when you find a pain point that your community needs, and you're enabling yourself to address that need with through services, that takes leadership, that takes self-betterment skills, that takes a lot of skills. Even if you just start and you don't understand how everything flows, well, guess what? You're going to wear many hats. You're going to have the tech hat. You're going to have the marketing hat. You're going to have the core message hat. Oh, don't forget the CEO hat. It's so many hats that you're going to have to wear. So my next question for you, to follow up on what you were saying to us, when you started this whole grand idea, I mean, it looks amazing on paper. Who doesn't want to impact their community in an inspiring way? But when life gets real and you have to be in the trenches and you have to carry the weight, what was going through your mind as you start facing new challenges and growing the mission that you're trying to do for your platform?
So I love that question. It's not one I'm usually asked, so thank you for asking it. I'm going to be honest, it was hard. It's real easy to hear the story and kind of jump to the idea that this has been just one long success. And it's not. I've always been a believer, and this has been hard for me to hold on to. Especially as I've been sad or days where it's just a hard day. I have really challenged my idea of what failure is and the idea of what failure can be. I love the idea that failure only exists if we truly give up and we truly stop trying. And I think that was something I really struggled with. I was really scared for a while that this was going to be one giant confusing mess, especially as I was recovering in my well-being, because a lot of this work has also been me finding my way to make myself healthy, to be as healthy as I can be. And so the biggest thing really was that fear of, like, if I do this, am I going to take it too far? And am I going to, say the wrong thing? Or am I going to, this is still a worry to this day. I know there are a lot of great public speakers out there. There's also a lot that get into that trend of, like, here's the 5 pathways to success kind of thing. And they sell it as the one and be all solution to things. And that was really something that I didn't want to do. And I think it slowed me down because I have always understood that the human journey is very complex. And I've also understood one of the dangers about kind of creating, these mindsets of, you do what I do, you're automatically going to be a success. Or if you do what I do, you're automatically going to be happy and healthy. I think the danger there is it can really quickly become a manipulative mindset. And I'm not here to call out any public speakers in particular. I think that there's a lot of beauty in a lot of what is said in those moments. But especially for myself, as someone who's been vulnerable and afraid a lot of my life, the last thing that I really wanted to do was chase success and end up hurting my community. And that, to this day, and especially in the trenches when I'm in them day to day, that's a real worry for me. And especially as I was recovering and continuing. I still say I'm in recovery. I know not everyone likes that phrasing. I say it as I know a lot about myself, and I know that I know my tendency to get stagnant. I know my tendency to get worried. And so in those early months, it was a lot of fear. A lot of, if I reach out to these people, are they going to reject me because I don't seem fully well? Or it was a lot of, am I going to say the wrong thing? It was also, that was part of the fear of failure. It was also a lot of misunderstanding my talents and a lot of worrying that if I reached out to someone, things would grow too quickly. It was also, I mean, one of the biggest worries I have now, honestly, whether or not I'm in the trenches, is, am I going to get too egotistical? Am I going to get really self-serving? And the reason I have that worry is I feel like when we get so self-involved and start forgetting about the community, or forgetting the idea of those truths that we all have our own personal journey, we can get kind of full of ourselves and assume that we're automatically going to have the solutions to things. Like, I think it's really dangerous when we apply the expert mindset and just immediately assume someone's going to be successful with someone. Because the reason I have that worry, the reason I had that at the beginning, is I don't want to misrepresent my community. And I'll be honest, I have a very intense self-perfectionism. It's incredibly toxic every single day. And this is something I have to fight to some degree. I ask myself, am I hurting or helping my community by doing this? Am I telling someone the wrong thing? Am I giving them too simple of an answer to a problem? Am I knowledgeable? Am I competent enough to help this person? And if I start diving into that too much, I can very easily destroy myself and my career. But if I don't have enough faith in it, I can also potentially not help someone. So it's a real intrinsic worry. It's a trenches kind of situation I'm in a lot of places. And the last thing that I had way back when that I'm still struggling with to this day, to be completely honest, is what happens if you reach a level of success and something really bad happens. It's a very significant, very prevalent thing. That fear has held me back in a lot of my life. And I think that comes from a place of worry about being successful, about being, the best I can be. And this is something that pulls me into the trenches a lot, especially if someone's having a rough day and they, tell me that I'm doing a terrible job, or there's a parent who's unhappy with something. And I think for me, that's where a lot of my anxiety plays in, like that hyper prepared kind of mindset. But I think back then, and especially when I'm in the trenches, even just today, if it pulls up, the best thing that I try to tell myself is you can't prevent everything from happening, right? You can't prepare, you can't stop all the bad things happening in the world, but you can handle how you respond to them. And I've learned over the years, especially doing this work, people will be far more responsive and respectful if you are a genuinely good person, even if you're getting pulled into those trenches or those worries, or they're actually happening. Being a good, genuine person who is going to take care of your community, if people see that in you and you carry that day to day, you will be able to get through those situations easier. You will be able to fight those problems. You will be able to fight for your community better. I think what happens is sometimes we allow those trenches battles to kind of make us pity ourselves, make us angry, make us upset, and then we hear the praise and we become a different person than we should be. And I think, if I hadn't had so much passion for my community and it isn't translated every day, if it wasn't translated every day, I think that my story would be very different.
Everything you're saying is all about storytelling since the beginning of the interview. So once again, listening to I'm Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Thomas Wilson, writer, business owner, advocate, and also sensory friendly event specialist. What I want to do in wrapping this up, because time always flies by, we're having fun, is the point is the aim. Because you mentioned about if we are positioning ourselves to be a genuine good person for our community, that takes a self decision. Mm-hmm. So we can no longer point our fingers at this circumstance or that circumstance or this person or that person or this policy and that policy or this country or that country or this, I'm getting at, right? At the end of the day, we have to hold up the mirror and say, what am I doing to make a difference? Let's stop asking what everybody else is doing, because that's so easy. It's so easy to just kind of sit back, relax, and say it's everyone else's fault. But what we should be saying, what am I bringing to the table? I mean, I'm taking an online class, and it's all about philosophy, and some of the topics is about what's the aim? What is good? What is character? What are all those things? Because when you take all those pieces and you start putting them together, that's when you truly understand life is happening. Okay? It's not about, am I going to spend the rest 30 years of my life in bliss and everything's perfect? No. It's like you said, what is your reaction to those situations? What's your reaction when you hit the real life? Man, like, this is going to get real. I have some important decisions I must make. And guess what? You watching and listening to this, there's going to be times you're going to miss the mark. But the question you should be asking yourself is, how many times do I need to miss that same mark? Because that's the problem. That's the problem. How many times do I have to keep going around this same mountain? Because if I can adjust myself, then that's a step one to better myself. But I have to be able to recognize that and then make that actual decision to start that process. Education, reading, reflecting, surround yourself with a better group of people, look at your circle. But at the same time, I will mention one last thing before I get back to you. You mentioned ego. Ego is silent, it's flashly, it makes you flashly, it makes you want more. And if you're not careful, it will be the definition of you. Mm-hmm. And that's where you don't want to go, because you put your goals and your success before your community. And when you do that, there's going to be some cracks in that shield. Mm-hmm. And then it's just going to crumble. So I'll let you have it, but I know my last thing for you will be touch a little bit more on your website real fast. And what are some of the things that you provide as resources? Because we can probably have another hour conversation, but for our audience and our viewers, kind of summarize a little bit more about your business and your website and what some things that they can use as a resource.
Absolutely. So myself, I know I've done a lot of talking. It's gone by very quickly. So first of all, everyone listening or watching, thank you for spending that time. So my website, I try to highlight a lot of the work I do, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or storytelling or active play events. I always try to update my website. I'm going to be honest, it takes a lot of emotional energy to update a website on a real regular basis.
When it's working.
For those of you who are able to do it, kudos to you. I am spread all over, so it always takes me a little bit of time. But when it comes to my work, I do a lot. Public speaking, advocacy, writing, problem solving, community advocacy, mentorship. Like we said, I wear so many hats. If I went through everything, we wouldn't have enough time in the day. That being said, yeah. That being said, you can always email me. You can always email me. You can always find me on LinkedIn. I love helping people get resources. I also want to say, if you're looking for something like this and you're not sure how I can work, I will let you know. There's a lot of community resources out there. Maybe less in some states than others, but you can Google it. You can look at it. I know there's a lot of frustration on the internet out there right now, but the internet is a great way to get connected with high quality organizations and services. And yes, they take a while to work, but they're worth it. The other thing I always like to say is on my websites, my link tree, you'll find other talks I've done on other topics. If you email me, I can tell you how I do programs and conversations and how I work with people to do trainings as well. But also, if you're just looking to reach out or learn a little bit more, there's so many great books out there. Local libraries are still amazing resources for people. But on top of that, ask me questions. Ask me how I do things. I know it's scary to ask questions sometimes, especially someone you just heard, either on the radio or on a podcast. But I genuinely love questions. I think they are a real pathway to power. And even if it's on LinkedIn or at a convention, I'd love to meet you. I'd love to have a conversation and explore how we can make this world a little bit brighter.
Well, once again, been listening to Refocused Radio and talking to us, not talking to us, but talking to our special guest, Thomas Wilson, all about everything that he does. Go to his website, is right there on the ticker tape. But if you're listening on the radio or podcast, it's RH Creative Advocacy and Storytelling.net. Like always, man, we might have to have you back on because I feel like there's a lot more many topics that we can explore in the future. But like always, want to say to you, Thomas, thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I'd love to be back on in the future.